Two boys sit in the same classroom. They take the same exams, they listen to the same lectures, and for a while, their lives look almost identical. 10 years later, one of them is financially free, traveling when he wants, working only on what excites him. The other is still stuck in a cubicle, buried under bills, asking himself how things went so wrong. Two athletes train under the same coach, eat the same meals, push through the same drills. Yet when the team is chosen, one name is always announced. The other is always left warming the bench. You have seen this story again and again. People start with what looks like equal ground and end with radically different outcomes. From childhood, you were told a story that sounded noble, inspiring, and fair, that all men are created equal, that if you put in the effort, the results will eventually line up, that the world is a level playing field, and your only task is to play hard enough. But then you step into real life and nothing matches that story. You work side by side with someone just as driven and watch his career soar while yours stalls. You follow the rules, you play fair, and someone else bends them and still gets rewarded. The more you try to reconcile the promise of equality with the facts of experience, the more it feels like you have been set up. And in that moment, the question forms, a question that cuts deeper than any personal failure. Maybe the problem is not that you took a wrong step or that you lacked some hidden trait. Maybe the problem is the story itself. What if the right question is not, what did I do wrong, but what exactly was I told about equality and who benefits from me believing it? That question does not just unsettle, it cracks the ground beneath your feet. Because if the story of equality is not what you thought it was, then the entire framework you use to judge your life, your worth, and your progress has to be rewritten from the ground up. From the very beginning, the story of equality is poured into you. Teachers say it in classrooms. Politicians repeat it on podiums. Parents whisper it as reassurance when life feels unfair. The words take root early. Everyone is born the same. Everyone has the same chance. All you have to do is work hard and the results will match. It sounds moral, it sounds uplifting, but it hides a dangerous confusion because there is not just one kind of equality. There are layers that get blurred together until you can no longer tell them apart. There is equality before the law, the promise that no matter who you are, the same rules should apply to you in a courtroom. There is equality of dignity, the moral claim that every human life deserves respect. But then there is equality of ability and equality of outcome. These are very different things, and it is here where the illusion creeps in. Society sells you the package as if they are the same. Opportunity, ability, outcome, all wrapped into one inspiring slogan. But reality never works that way. Equality before the law is possible. Equality of dignity is essential. Equality of ability and outcome has never existed and never will. Yet the system needs you to believe in the whole bundle, because belief in perfect equality keeps the machine running. Schools and universities pitch themselves on the dream that everyone can end up the same if they just enroll. Companies recruit with slogans about equal opportunity, while quietly rewarding a select few with promotions and influence. Advertisements tell you that success is universal and within reach, while hiding the small print of inherited networks, resources, and luck. The story stabilizes society. It keeps people patient. It keeps them striving, waiting their turn, convinced that their reward is just around the corner. Because if you truly believed the game was tilted from the start, you might walk off the field. Here is the brutal truth. The world does not reward belief in equality. It does not hand out prizes simply because you trusted the story. The world rewards leverage. It rewards position. It rewards what you can control and what you can multiply. And this is why the story of equality is not harmless. It is not just an inspiring myth to keep us hopeful. It is a myth that leaves you vulnerable. Because while you are clinging to the idea that everyone is the same, Someone else is quietly pulling ahead, building advantages that scale, and using your belief to keep you compliant. Equality has been sold to you as a moral product, a promise that feels good to repeat but dangerous to live by. The sooner you see the layers clearly, the sooner you understand why outcomes diverge so violently in real life. Even if we start from the same classroom, the same workplace, the same playing field, life begins to tilt in quiet but powerful ways. The illusion says that equal opportunity will lead to equal results. Reality shows that even the smallest differences at the start will widen into enormous gaps over time. Consider the inputs we rarely acknowledge. Temperament, energy levels, natural curiosity, speed of learning, physical health, all of these vary from person to person before effort even enters the picture. Add to that the environment, the family you were born into, the teachers who took you seriously, the network that opened doors, the culture that shaped your ambitions. These are not details. They are the hidden architecture of a life. Two children may both be given a library card. One child grows up in a home where reading is celebrated. Conversations are rich. Mentors appear. The other grows up in a home of noise, distraction, and survival. The opportunity looks equal on paper. In practice, it is not even close. Then there is the question of scale. Some forms of effort cannot multiply. They remain trapped in the hours of your body. A nurse can only care for one patient at a time. A construction worker can only build as long as his hands hold up. Meanwhile, other efforts scale without limit. A line of code written once can be used by millions. A piece of capital invested can generate returns while its owner sleeps. A story told on the right platform can reshape the thinking of entire nations. This is the hidden math of inequality. The same number of hours, the same amount of visible effort, produces outcomes that are not just slightly different, but exponentially different. One person sweats 12 hours a day and never escapes the paycheck. Another makes a leveraged move and watches wealth accumulate even when absent. And here is where the paradox becomes clear. The system tells you that fairness comes from equal effort. But results do not care about effort. Results care about leverage, position, and timing. Those who control networks, resources, or narratives are playing a game that multiplies itself. Those who only supply raw labor are stuck in a game that resets every morning. Sociologists call it cumulative advantage. Economists call it preferential attachment, but you know it as the simple reality that success attracts more success. Once someone gains a foothold through talent, connections, or pure chance, the system tilts further in their favor. More opportunities flow their way, more credibility is granted, more trust is extended, and with every round, the distance grows larger. So even if you and I are offered the same starting line, our roads climb at different angles. One of us is walking a gentle slope, the other is dragging up a mountain. Step for step, effort for effort, the gap widens not because of laziness or virtue, but because of the geometry of advantage. That is why equality as a promise collapses under its own weight. Equal beginnings do not lead to equal ends. They cannot, because differences in inputs, scale, and cumulative advantage guarantee that the outcomes will always diverge. The modern world struggles with the idea that people are not the same. It feels dangerous to admit. It feels unfair. But more than 2,000 years ago, Aristotle confronted this head-on. He drew a sharp line between what is written by men and what is written into nature itself. He called the first nomos, the laws and customs we invent. Under nomos, we can declare that all citizens stand equal before the court. We can agree that every human life carries the same dignity, and in that sense, equality is real and necessary. But Aristotle contrasted this with physis, nature, and nature does not distribute gifts evenly. One man is quick, another is slow. One has a memory that can hold libraries, another forgets by tomorrow. One is driven by fire, another is cautious and soft. For Aristotle, this was not a moral failing. It was simply how reality is structured. And because of this, the demand for identical results across all men was not just unrealistic. It was a misunderstanding of what it means to be human. Here is where he introduces a principle that still unsettles us today: distributive justice. Justice, he said, is not giving everyone the same. Justice is giving each what is due, in proportion to their contribution, their capacity, and their role. Equal shares for unequal men is not justice, it is distortion. Think of it like this. If two musicians audition and one can barely keep rhythm while the other composes symphonies, treating them as identical is not fairness, it is blindness. Aristotle believed that order comes from recognizing difference and honoring each according to their nature and their effort. This connects to one of his deepest insights: telos. Everything in nature has a purpose, a function, an end toward which it strives. The telos of a knife is to cut. The telos of an acorn is to grow into an oak. The telos of a human being is to exercise reason and cultivate virtue. But within that, each person has a particular expression, a role, a capacity that is theirs alone. And this is where the idea of flourishing, what Aristotle called eudaimonia, takes shape. To flourish is not to become equal with another man. To flourish is to fulfill your own telos, to develop the virtues that make your nature shine. A cactus flourishes by thriving in the desert. A lotus flourishes by opening on water. To demand that the cactus bloom like the lotus or that the lotus endure the desert is to destroy both. Now, it is important to recognize the context. Aristotle lived in a world of city-states, slavery, and hierarchies that modern ethics cannot accept. His arguments about natural order have been used, sometimes disastrously, to justify oppression. That is not the point here. The point is to see his deeper lesson, that human beings are not carbon copies. Our differences are not mistakes to be erased. They are realities to be understood. When you take this lens, the illusion of equality becomes clear. It is not that every man must be measured against every other. It is that each man must be measured against his telos, against the standard of what he was built to become. The tragedy is not that men are unequal. The tragedy is that men spend their lives chasing someone else's telos instead of discovering and fulfilling their own. If Aristotle exposed the natural differences, modern culture tried to cover them back up with a mask. The mask says, everyone is the same. Everyone can do anything. Anyone can be anyone. And at first, it feels comforting. It sounds moral. But beneath the surface, it is a trap that quietly poisons how we think about ourselves and others. Psychologists call it equality bias, the tendency to assume that every person has the same ability, the same potential, the same limits. It is cousin to the blank slate illusion, the belief that we all begin identical and only society shapes us afterward. The appeal is obvious. If everyone is the same, then success and failure are easy to explain. Work hard, you rise. Fail to work hard, you fall. The formula feels fair, but reality refuses to fit into that formula, and when outcomes diverge, the illusion begins to turn toxic. Because if we all started equal, then any gap must mean someone cheated, or that the system is corrupted, or worst of all, that you yourself are broken. This moralization of sameness does something dangerous. It teaches us that difference equals injustice, that superiority must mean exploitation, that excellence is an insult rather than an inspiration. Instead of asking, what is this person's telos and what can I learn from it, we collapse into resentment. We label the standout as unfair, the gifted as privileged, the successful as corrupt. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the chance to grow. Social media amplifies the trap. Scroll through your feed and you see curated stories that scream, anyone can do this, everyone is crushing it. You should be too. Behind the curtain, you are watching survivorship bias, selective editing, and the spotlight effect. But the message hits the same nerve: sameness. If they can, you must. And if you cannot, something is wrong with you. The more deeply you buy into sameness, the more painful reality becomes. Every difference feels like a personal insult. Every success of another feels like a judgment on you. And the more unbearable that feels, the easier you are to manipulate with slogans about equality, fairness, and justice that promise comfort but deliver dependence. Here is the paradox: the belief that all people are identical was supposed to uplift us. Instead, it shackles us, because the moment you mistake sameness for morality, you will never allow yourself to see what is real, that justice is not sameness. Justice is proportion. Fulfillment is not matching someone else. Fulfillment is alignment with your own telos. The mask of sameness may feel kind, but it blinds you, and the longer you wear it, the harder it becomes to recognize your own face beneath it. If sameness is the mask, the way out begins by ripping it off. We need to redefine what equality actually means, what it can promise us, and what it never will. There are two forms of equality that are non-negotiable: equality of dignity and equality before the law. Every person, no matter their background, deserves respect as a human being. Every citizen, no matter their power, should stand under the same rules in court. This is the foundation of a civilized society. Without it, life collapses into tyranny. But beyond that, equality does not stretch. Men are not equal in talent. They are not equal in temperament, in energy, in memory, in imagination. And the goal is not to erase these differences, but to recognize them as the terrain of life. The real tragedy is not that we are different. The real tragedy is wasting years pretending we are not. Here, Aristotle gives us a map forward. He says that every being has a telos, a purpose, a function, an end. To live well is to discover yours. And once you know it, the task becomes to cultivate arete, virtue, excellence, the stable qualities that allow you to fulfill your telos. Flourishing, eudaimonia, comes not from being like others, but from becoming fully yourself. In practical terms, this means asking three questions. First, what is my telos? Where do my natural energies, my curiosities, my capacities point me? Second, what are the arete I must train daily? What virtues, habits, and skills will turn raw potential into stable power? And third, what leverage can I build to scale this telos? Because without leverage, even the strongest telos remains trapped inside your own body. This is the Tal framework: telos, arete, leverage. Telos, the inner compass. Arete, the discipline, leverage, the multiplier. Together they form a strategy to live by. Look around. The men who quietly hold power in society are not those who tried to copy everyone else. They are the ones who found the arena where their telos mattered, built habits that made them formidable, and then stacked leverage until their influence could not be ignored. Some used capital, some used code, some used networks, some used story. The forms differ. The pattern is the same. And this has direct consequences for how you live. Stop measuring your worth by the hours you grind. Hours alone cannot compete with leverage. Start measuring by how aligned your telos is, how disciplined your arete is, and how wisely you build leverage that scales. Stop chasing equality with your neighbor. Start negotiating for proportion. Demand to be valued not because you exist, but because of the weight you bring, the responsibilities you carry, the outcomes you create. This shift also protects your mind. When you know your telos, you stop drowning in comparison. When you focus on your arete, you stop being consumed by resentment. When you invest in leverage, you stop waiting for luck. You no longer beg the system for a fair share. You design your own proportion. Here is the hard truth. You will never be equal to the man beside you, but you do not have to be. Your task is not to become him. Your task is to become the fullest version of yourself, and to demand the returns that align with that. Do not settle for the cheap promise of sameness. Build the hard reality of proportion. That is where dignity, freedom, and flourishing actually live. So let us be clear. Humans will never be truly equal, not in talent, not in temperament, not in outcome. And that is not a curse. It is an invitation to stop living by the false script of sameness and to begin living by the truth of proportion. Because when you cling to sameness, every difference feels like injustice. Every success of another feels like your defeat. You live in resentment, blind to your own potential. But when you shift to proportion, the picture changes. You see that justice is not about flattening everyone into the same shape. Justice is about alignment, about rewarding individuals according to what they bring, according to their telos, their effort, their responsibility. So the real question is no longer, why am I not equal to them? The real question is, am I living in proportion to who I am meant to be? Picture a forest. The oak does not envy the pine. The pine does not resent the cedar. Each grows toward its own height, in its own rhythm, by its own design. The health of the forest depends not on sameness, but on difference fulfilled. Humans are no different. And so I leave you with a challenge. Will you keep demanding sameness, or will you claim proportion? Will you spend your years chasing another person's telos, or will you build the leverage and discipline to scale your own? Subscribe if you are ready to detox from the illusions society sells you and to build a life of proportion. A life not loud, not shallow, but heavy with weight, grounded in your telos, and undeniable in its impact.